So thank you all very much for attending this evening. I was asked to put on this presentation by J.M. Rowe from Arkansas. Several of you know him. He threw me under the bus. He's a member of our association and been a great and active participant for us over the years. So today we're going to talk about the Central States Communications exercise. What started it? What really brought us wanting to do an event like this? And then after we get into the history and the past iterations of the event, we're going to talk about what's coming up in the future and the growth that we're seeing. So my name is Johnathan Ayres. I'm the president of the Central States Communications Association. We're a 501c3 that we formed because we discovered that we can do a lot of things that governmental agencies can't, such as taking money from sponsors and kind of orchestrating things. So I've been cursed and privileged to serve as the president of the association. I have a 20-year career in fire, EMS, and emergency management. Spent 10 years as a county emergency management director. I'm an instructor for the DHS communications unit leader and communications technician curriculums for incident response. And I'm a general class amateur radio operator. I've been an operator since I was a teenager, which has been a few years back. My call sign is KB0YDU. I'm not as active as I'd like to be, but I still get to get on and play occasionally. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history. What really forged getting this communications group together, the Central States Communications Group, to really be the powerhouse that it is today. And really what it was the Joplin tornado. The Joplin tornado occurred. I was the emergency management director at Laclede County, which is about 100 miles northeast of Joplin. And I actually ended up on our initial incident management team going in that night to assist in the Joplin EOC with the management of the incident. And I will tell you, this was probably one of the most stressful incidents of my career as a career emergency manager with a background in field response because it was so overwhelming. This is some tower camera video, and I don't know if this is going to work.
As a public report of a funnel cloud. A public report meaning that one of their trained spotters has to see it, but there's our tower cam.
That would appear to be a power flash. That could be from a lightning strike, but that is the portion of the storm that we have been concerned with.
Tornado fires
once again going off in Joplin. Those are definitely power flashes that we're seeing on the ground. We are continuing to follow this at this point in time. Caitlin, I'm going to let you take over for a minute.
Yes, right now it does look like there is a tornado on the ground in the southern portion of Joplin, just to the south of our station here. It is taking out those power lines. You can see those flashes on there. Everybody, if you live in southern Jasper, northern Newton, take cover.
Yes, please.
Right now, I'm telling you to take cover right now. We do have a tornado on the ground.
This is a tornado. Yeah, this is a very dangerous situation. We cannot stress this enough. If you are in Joplin, please take cover right now.
Those flashes that you were seeing were not power lines. Those were entire substations being destroyed. The Joplin tornado was one of the costliest natural disasters on record, and it obliterated about a third of the town. The picture you see here in the foreground was the former St. John's Hospital that was shifted off of its foundation by several inches. Had to be completely destroyed and demolished because the damage was just too great. You can't tell where any landmarks were in the city. If you tried to navigate by, oh, there used to be a house here, there used to be a tree here, there was a street sign here, any sense of direction you had after the tornado was pretty much gone. Again, this was a very catastrophic event. It's so hard to put into words and so hard to grasp in pictures. I will tell you, in the communications realm, we screwed up on this incident. We went in with not enough resources. We did not assign a communications unit leader to help manage communications. There was a misperception from the city of Joplin as to what the communications unit leader's role was. And they said, our radio system is working fine. We don't need that. We don't need that. And so we decided not to push the issue. Normally, I'm the COMMEL for our incident management team, but we were so short-staffed that I ended up being the operations section chief for the first 3 days. We knew what was going to happen, but we didn't want to have the political football. Communications chaos ensued. Once we got a communications plan going, it took us 3 days to get operational control on communications and coordination. Absolute nightmare. We screwed up. We knew we screwed up. But at that point, we had to do what we had to do to get things done. This is some communications pictures from the actual Joplin tornado where we were. So what we decided after the Joplin tornado, a group of us got together and said, you know what? We want to prove that we fixed the problems. The not having a communications unit leader was one of the problems that we had. So we said, you know what? Let's get together and have an exercise and show that we really solved these problems. So what was born out of that was the 2017 4 states communications exercise. And we actually found the perfect venue to hold this at. Over here is Kansas. Over here is Missouri. Over here is Oklahoma. And right here at the junction of all 3 states is the downstream casino resort. And it's all tribal ground. So it's neutral ground that not any one state can claim as theirs for their exercise. And we didn't want that. We didn't want Missouri to say this is our exercise. We wanted this to be a partnership between all 4 states, and Arkansas included. They're a little bit removed from the border here, but we got 3 of the 4, so that's not bad. We'll take it. But we found the perfect venue so no one agency or no one state could claim this is their event. It's about 5 miles west of Joplin. So in 2017, we thought we're going to get some people together and we're going to have this communications exercise to show that we fixed these problems. This is a picture from our 2017 event. And we had a whopping 85 people show up from the 4 states. We had 10 trucks show up and 35 different organizations. We thought, wow, this is huge. This is great. We really didn't know what we were doing. We said, we just want to get there and we're going to have Verizon pay for dinner one night. We're going to have FirstNet pay for dinner one night. And we're just going to throw this out and see what it looks like. And it went really well. It went so well that we got told, you have to do this again. Okay. So we'll do it again. So at that point, once we kind of learned a little bit more about organizing conferences and states, we decided we're going to do another exercise. So we formed the Central States Communications Association as a 501c3. And the biggest reason for forming that is we needed an organization to be able to take in for our participants as possible. So meals are paid for. The only thing that really the participants have to take care of is their travel and their lodging. And the hotel does us a great rate. They did like $85 a night for lodging. So they really helped us keep the costs down. And so we formed this 501c3 to be able to handle a lot of that money and do a lot of the things that different states could not do. So we really wanted to make sure that that we had a way to do this. So we did the exercise again in 2019. And here's a picture of the exercise field from our 2019 exercise. And as you can tell, there's a lot more than 10 trucks there. So this was 2 years since our previous exercise. We had 242 participants. We almost tripled in size. 23 states were represented at our 2017 event, 56 trucks, and 88 organizations. We thought there is no way we could get any bigger. So we plan to do this every 2 years. We should have done it last year, but as has happened with many things, COVID kind of threw a wrench in things for us. And it really kind of threw things off a little bit. But the 2019 event, we really thought we had maxed out everything we could do. We had aircraft coming in to do air-to-ground interop. We had participants from all over. We thought, this is great. We can't get any bigger. Well, we were wrong. So we get to the 2022 Central States Communications exercise that we just did back in September, and we got even bigger. At this point, I don't know that we could get much bigger than we were for this event. And I know at least two of you that are in the room here now, we're actually at this event. But this is the exercise field from our 2022 event. We had 350 participants show up for this event. We sold out the entire hotel, which they said they have never done for a midweek event. 26 states, plus Washington, D.C., plus 2 territories, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, had communications personnel come to this event. 65 communications vehicles and 94 organizations were present for our 2022 event. We had several partners from the sponsor side: FirstNet, AT&T, Cisco, JPS, a great amount of participants. This is the map of everywhere we had participation from. 26 states, plus DC, plus 2 territories. That's a lot. And when we look at this and start going, wow, where do we see some gaps? We had every FEMA region represented, again, which is amazing. But this could not be done with a lot of partnerships. We started our planning for this a year in advance. Our lead agencies were representatives from Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, and Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. And what we decided to do was, as the organization, apply to the Department of Homeland Security for a regional technical assistance grant. And the way that worked is that way we did not have this tied to a single state. Every state then endorsed this regional request so that it could be done on behalf of all of the states. So the feds played an integral role in doing this, and they said, tell us what you need and we're going to get out of your way. It's the best thing the federal government can do. So they supplied us additional staffing that we needed for controllers and evaluators, as well as helping with printed material and some of the other logistics. We had participation from FEMA, Department of Homeland Security, Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency, and the Federal Communications Commission. All of them sent leadership from Washington, D.C. out to see this event and actively participate. And to that point, we are now the largest public safety communications exercise in the United States, which is, again, amazing to me that we've been able to do this. The core objectives, really what we wanted to accomplish with this exercise, is task book and credentialing sign-offs for those people that are trained in the communications unit positions in ICS. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. We wanted to test equipment and interoperability capabilities with partners that you wouldn't normally work with. And then we wanted to expose these operators to new technologies and methodologies. As many of you know, there's more than one way to achieve a lot of different things. So sometimes knowing that there's other ways that you can do it to accomplish a goal is important. If this piece of equipment fails, how else can you achieve this goal? So that's one of the other things that we want to do, is make sure to expose people to new technologies and methodologies as to how things get done. So for the exercise itself, we did a no scenario exercise. If you participate in a lot of communications exercises, there's a lot of downtime where you're sitting and waiting on the field to generate your next inject, because they're playing with hazardous materials, they're playing with fire, they're doing something. But the communication side is really just sitting there waiting. So what we did is we did a no scenario type of exercise where we focused on task blocks and competencies that correlate to their task books that they use for their credentialing to prove that they're competent in these roles. We've also added in real world tasks that have been known to happen in the field to give them some more experience. Things like setting up portable repeaters, linking linking different channels together, deploying equipment to field sites. And we encourage teams to perform the tasks multiple times. Rotate through your team members, use different equipment each time, try a different way of doing it, and see if you can accomplish the goal. This is a no-fail scenario. This is where you can learn and nobody's going to get hurt. Nothing's going to go wrong unless you let the magic smoke out of your equipment. And hey, I'm not responsible for that one. But take the time to go ahead and try a new way of doing things, and let's see if something works. We did include a lot of Oxcom and amateur radio tasks in our task blocks because a lot of these people are amateur radio operators and they have ham equipment on their trucks. So we did have some in there. We're going to add even more next time. In fact, we're in discussions about adding some HF and longer range components for our next exercise. The way task books work is they're core competencies and tasks. And they're standardized by physicians, but this entire task book process is created by FEMA. There's a working group that creates the tasks that go into the task books for the various positions, but it's up to each state to determine who can sign task books in your state. And that's the thing that really is a challenge. Normally, me as a Missouri communications unit leader, I couldn't go to Kansas and they could not sign my task book because it would not be honored in Missouri. Missouri says who can sign a Missouri task book. So this is one of the challenges that we've worked with over time, but we actually worked out a way to do it. And for this event, we developed a multi-state memorandum of understanding allowing reciprocity for task book signing for qualified instructors from participating states. So for this event, standing in the state of Kansas, somebody working on their task book from the state of Texas could have their task book signed by an evaluator from the state of Wisconsin, and it was considered valid. This took a lot of work to get all 26 states to agree to this, but this was absolutely phenomenal. Arkansas was the first signer to this, and it has went like wildfire. There is now a movement to develop a national reciprocity framework for communications unit credentialing to allow this to happen for different types of events, not just this one event that we had. So this is being pushed to the national level to make a national reciprocity framework for credentialing for communications within public safety. And this is huge. We wouldn't have seen something like this 5 years ago. So this is very important to us in the public safety communications realm. Our second big thing that we want to do with this exercise is to test equipment and interoperability capabilities. And one of the ways we do this is we partner up teams from different states and disciplines that really wouldn't normally work together. For example, Texas DPS, you'll see in this second picture here, brought one of their semi-trucks from the Houston area. And we partnered them up with Jasper County, Missouri 911 Center and their smaller truck. And FEMA Region 7 brought their JFO staff down. And so that's something that was really huge. I see the question about reciprocity MOU. We can make a copy of that available. J.M. Rowe from Arkansas was the one that spearheaded that. The National Council of Statewide Interoperability Coordinators is working on the National Reciprocity Agreement right now. So as we see that moving forward, we'll be able to give some updates on that. But I know that's a movement that's on its way, and we're helping push it, but we don't want to push too hard. It's very much like NQS or Pro Board. So when we talk about teams, again, that normally wouldn't work together, we try and partner up these teams that would not normally work together to force them to interoperate and learn how each other does things. And it's proven to be very advantageous. And for example, you see in this middle picture here, the Texas DPS semi, and they're stringing an umbilical cord. They happen to be using the same type of dispatch console or radio control platform that the Jasper County truck was using. Jasper County had a failure on their truck, and they were trying to figure out how to work around it. Texas says, oh yeah, we know how to do that. We've had that happen before. Let's string a cable between our two trucks and we can tie our resources together, and then you can ride some of our resources in our truck with your dispatch consoles. So it was really neat to see that interaction from people from Houston, Texas, and people from Joplin, Missouri, being able to interoperate and get their equipment working together. It's very, very nice to see those types of things happening. We really want to make sure that everybody can play well together. And then exposure to new technologies and methodologies. The vendor community is very good about sponsoring this event. To put on this event, it cost us a little under $80,000 to put on this event, to pay for meals, to pay for facilities, all of those things. So our vendors really come to the table and they made sure that this event was covered. So Verizon, FirstNet, Chimeta, JPS, Sierra Wireless, all came to the table to make sure those costs were covered. But in addition, they brought out equipment and they talked to the people that use this equipment every day and said, tell us what your problems are with our equipment so we can fix it and make it better. And then they would bring out the next generation of their equipment that they're trying to develop, put it in the hands of the practitioners and said, tell us if this works. Tell us what we can do to make it better. So for our vendors and our sponsor community, this is invaluable feedback for them because they're not getting just some guy that thinks how it might operate. They're actually talking to the people that use their equipment day in and day out in these scenarios. They're getting that real world feedback. Sometimes it's good feedback. Sometimes it may not be what they want to hear, but they know that they're going to get the truth from those people that's running the equipment. So we have to give good props to our sponsors and our vendors who made the event possible and then brought out a lot of the equipment, the new things that are happening. One of the other things that we did is a secondary exercise. We partnered with emergency management directors in Newton County, Missouri, and Jasper County, Missouri, to set up alternate EOCs for one day of their event. And then we assigned teams that wanted to participate in this extracurricular exercise or this add-on exercise to go to these alternate EOCs and help them set up. And in the meantime, they also had to develop wide area links between the two EOCs and the main exercise venue site where FEMA set up a mock JFO. So it was really interesting to see how that worked, but it worked very well. The teams that participated in this and did a phenomenal job of supporting those remote sites. So in both of these scenarios, in Newton County, Missouri and Jasper County, Missouri, they actually went to fire stations for their backup locations. And they had no communications capability. So the teams coming in had to supply everything from phone, radio, data, everything for these alternate EOCs. And they did an amazing job. Moore, Oklahoma deployed with, I believe, ITDRC, maybe it was Texas. But Moore, Oklahoma was the lead team that went to Newton County, Missouri. And they did an absolutely great job. They loved it. It was a very real world scenario. So it worked, again, very well. On the question on P25 standard for dispatch position equipment, there is something called CSSI or console subsystem interface, but it requires a wireline connection to the network core, the P25 network core. And in most of these vehicles, we don't want to do a direct network connection to a network core. We'll actually use mobile radios or control stations that are remotely controlled by the dispatch console software in the vehicles. There's a rack in the back with a bunch of radios and we'll remotely control them like that. But at that point, it's vendor specific or proprietary information of how that data goes from the dispatch console to control the control stations of those radios in the back. So I hope that answers the question that was out there on the P25 standard for dispatch position equipment. So this exercise, as you can tell, with a lot of moving parts. And how did we manage such an event? Well, it's really simple. We used incident command system or incident management system. We play like we train. We activated our regional incident management team, the Southwest Missouri Incident Support Team, and they supplied staffing a plan section chief, safety officer, liaison, air boss, all of these moving parts that we needed to really get things done. So we developed a full incident action plan that we distributed to all of the incident staff working the event, as well as to all of the participants. So this was our briefing as trucks were starting to arrive. We did a briefing over pizza in the parking lot, getting all of our staff ready to go before we opened up the staging area fully and trucks started arriving. We had trucks that arrived early. We were initially going to open the staging area at about 2 p.m. And this shot where you see the trucks in the background, they were parked in a secondary parking lot. We told nobody can come in until we open the staging area. And we had about 12 trucks, 12 large trucks staged in the staging area when we finally announced on the air that we were going to open staging. And I will tell you, it was almost like you were at a NASCAR race and said, "Gentlemen, start your engines." When we announced on the radio that the staging area was opening, every big diesel motor on every one of those trucks fired up because they all wanted to be the first one into the staging area in the parking lot. I wish we would have had a camera going for that because it was amazing just to hear that and see them all moving in. Our incident command chart, this kind of shows you how things go. I was, again, cursed or privileged, depending on how you look at it, serve as the incident commander or the overall event director for this event as the president of the association. But the operations section, which is really the exercise, is made up from partners from all of our states. So up here we have Tara, who is our operations section chief. Tommy is from Texas. J.M. Rowe is from Arkansas. Matt McMahon is from North Carolina. Travis Marshall's from Kansas. Margaret is from Wisconsin. We had people from all over the United States helping us run this exercise and coming in to do it. And our team was absolutely amazing. Here's a picture of staff we were getting together right before we opened up everything. Again, this was absolutely a huge event. We could not have done this without the help from everybody. So what's next? What's in the future for us? Well, there's a lot of things coming up. In 2023, that we've just got this locked in the last couple of days, we're going to do what's called the Central States Red River Communications Unit Boot Camp. We're going to run 6 communications classes simultaneously. Communications unit leader, communications unit technician, incident tactical dispatcher, incident communications center manager, IT service unit leader, and an OXCOM class, all simultaneously. All of the classes will end on the same day, and the next day will be a one-day exercise. This will be coming up in October of 2023 in Thackerville, Oklahoma. This is on I-35 at the Oklahoma-Texas state line. There's more information coming out on that in the next several months. If you're interested in participating in any of those classes, I suggest you put this on your calendar now. This is going to be open to anyone from across the country to participate in. So it's absolutely huge. Something that just got worked on this evening that we've gotten pulled into from our partners in the north. Wisconsin and Illinois are doing a joint exercise next year to prepare for the upcoming Republican and Democratic national conventions that will likely be held in Milwaukee. We are actually being asked to participate in those exercises to help them prepare for those events. In 2024, we will again be repeating the Central States Communications exercise. We try and do it every 2 years, so that'll be coming up in September 2024. And we're going to be expanding the local use of in the regional, or I'm sorry, in the local emergency operations centers. So we're going to be having more local EOCs where teams can deploy to set up those alternate communications. And then there's also discussion coming up of a North Central Communications exercise in the Wisconsin, Minnesota area, probably going to be 2023, late 23, or maybe even 2025. But we've also been asked by CISA to be able to duplicate or replicate what we've created for the Central States Communications exercise so that it can be done in other parts of the country. There's interest in East Coast and West Coast. And one of the things we're looking at is once we get the East Coast and West Coast exercises rolling, doing the East, West, and Central exercises all at the same time. And we'll do HF long distance communications between all three of those sites. Heaven forbid we ever have the New Madrid earthquake scenario. HF may be some of our best communications for wide area that we have available to us. So we need to be able to exercise that and make that work very well. And in addition, we're still working on finalizing that interstate COMMU memorandum of understanding, the National Reciprocity MOU with the National Council of Statewide Interoperability Coordinators. That's going to take some time and everybody's buy-in, but we're continuing to push forward on that. We still keep pushing for continued collaboration. We try and remind people state lines are not walls that we can't cross. We have to collaborate cross-border. From where I'm at, I'm about 45 minutes from the Arkansas state line, and I'm about an hour from Oklahoma and Kansas. It's a very real potential. I could get called to either of those states to go assist for communications during an event. I've been deployed to Texas. I've been deployed to New York for communications. I need to know who my peers are in these states, and I need to collaborate with them now before an event occurs. So we do a huge amount of collaboration through social media, informal sharing of information and ideas. So some of the things we share, when there was a big arson issue for cell phone towers in Tennessee, some deployment stuff over on the right-hand side when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl back in 2020. And we had to have some communications resources deployed to go assist with their big celebration. And then we have some fun stuff too. So we really want to foster those relationships and collaboration before an event occurs. That's critical. As many of you know, during an incident is not the time to be exchanging business cards. It's not the time to do it. So with that, that's kind of the high level of the Central States Communications exercise. I'd welcome any questions, comments, you know, by all means, throw me what you got. And for those of you that are, if you do have something, go ahead and, I saw somebody raise their hand. I can't see where it went, but whoever it was, go ahead and unmute yourself and go for it.
Well, that's my hand I see raised. So I'm
Okay.
in awe that you're doing this interoperability collaboration between so many different state entities. And I suppose I'm a little bit sensitive about that because sometimes it feels like states are proprietary about how they do things. So if you're breaking through that, kudos to you.
And really, one of the biggest things that we found is not one state has enough communications resources to deploy during some of these larger events. So a lot of us have to rely on our neighbors. For example, I've already been forewarned that I'm probably going to get called to Arkansas for an upcoming event next year. It's a pre-planned event because they may not have enough resources. I said, gladly, I'll come down and play. So the statewide interoperability coordinators in all of the participating states have been phenomenal. They see the value in this. They realize that this is helping us all build better relationships, better skill sets. And again, we can do things that sometimes state government can't, such as some of the funding streams from sponsors to reduce the participation cost for some of these people, and a lot of them are volunteers. So we really want to do what we can to promote this. And again, those statewide interoperability coordinators are key in helping us promote these events. Any other questions? Victor, go ahead.
Thank you. It took me a while to get my screen organized here. You talk a bit about interoperability. In Washington State, we started on the interoperability mission about 10, 15 years ago. And part of that, if my understanding is correct, was getting all the police, all law enforcement under one frequency or under one band so that they could talk to each other across county lines, across jurisdictions. When you talk about that, though, for us at ACS cert level, did that include interoperability, not radios, but just the fact that ACS is talking to CERT? Our goal here is to have our CERT people report to the fire station, tell the ACS operator what's going on, and then they report up to fire control. Is that also considered interoperability when you have different groups, even if it's just voice communication, face-to-face communication?
Absolutely. Interoperability is not just radio. Interoperability is making sure that we're using common terminology even. So we make sure, and one of the examples that I use when I'm teaching class all the time is for common terminology, we have to make sure that what we're sending, that message, is interpreted correctly. So if I tell a fire crew from the fire department that I need you to go cover a location, that means that they're going to take their fire truck and they're going to go to this area and they're going to stand by for calls. If I tell a Marine unit that I need them to cover an area, they're going to lay down suppressive fire in that area. That's two completely different scenarios. So we have to make sure the terminology is also thing. It's not just the radio frequency, it's terminology. So we have to make sure that people understand the message that we are trying to communicate is interpreted and received correctly on the far side. And that's just, again, like I said, one of the examples that I use when I'm teaching class, and everybody gets a good chuckle out of it because they understand that. But it comes from not just getting everybody on the same system. One of the advantages of this site that we use, being at the junction of all the states, we do not use any of the state trunk systems for the event. We use the national interoperability channels, because that's what we're really here to test, is those cross-border communications, and not just those local or state communication systems. We want to look even bigger. If I deploy to another area for a hurricane, for example, I need to make sure that I'm going to be able to communicate on national interoperability channels and using established national parameters and protocols. So we stress not just the frequency information, not just the band, but there's a lot of different things that comprise interoperability. And so that's even data interoperability. How do we share data? How do we share video feeds? Those types of things, which are becoming more and more prevalent in public safety communication. So it's not just voice, but voice is one of the most important components.
Do I have to buy the task book, or is there a place I can get my hands on it?
Yeah, so you can actually download the task books. If you search for FEMA COMMEX task book, they're readily available, where you can download them and you can see the tasks in there, as well as the CommT task book is out there, and the OXCOM task book, which is geared more to amateur radio. And you know, the OXCOM platform, or the OXCOM class, is a great class. It really stresses how to assist public safety during a major event, and that's really, I think, you know, why a lot of us are here from the amateur radio communities. We want to be able to help our communities.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, I will stick around for a little bit if anybody wants to stick around, but guys, thank you for the opportunity.
Wait, welcome, and it's great presentation. Let's get a bang the drum a little bit here. Is there anybody that's got any comments out there? Okay. Interesting crowd here tonight. I see that somebody's put some links in the chat. What are those links to?
Task books.
Ah,
Yes, those are for the task books.
all right. Be sure to check your chat for that. And those that's watching this on YouTube and such, go to the link for the documents and you'll be able to get that also. And Tom, you got your hand up.
Yes, sir. I'd like to know more about integrating the ability of these various comm units to work with each other, not just in terms of who they can talk to in the field, but how they can work their equipment with each other. And I don't know anything about that. So if somebody has something to share in that regard, I'd love to hear about it. Now, the example you gave during the presentation is very encouraging, but how could we make that more common if it's possible?
The biggest thing is these types of exercises where we're seeing that interaction between those bigger trucks. Where we can get them to a common location, and it's trucks that, like I said, don't normally work together. Or, for example, if trucks from Oklahoma normally work with each other, they may have that same capability, or they may have a common problem that they don't realize. And I'll give you an example. In the state of Missouri, when our Department of Public Safety, excuse me, was rolling out multi-band radios and giving them out for all of our communications vehicles many years ago. This has been almost 10 years ago now. The template that they used with some of the national interoperability channels had some typos in it and had some errors in it. Well, when we were operating as Missouri trucks all together at one event, we never knew there was a problem. When we started working with other states, we get, wait a minute, this channel's not working right in our radio. We can't communicate with our neighbors on 8TAC93. Why is this not working? Which led to an entire discovery of a statewide template was rolled out wrong. So getting these interactions where you're normally not working, or you're working with people that you wouldn't work with, that's one of the first keys, and testing equipment between the trucks. The other thing is, just going and visiting your neighbors and seeing what equipment they have. Because you may go, wait a minute, we've got a piece of equipment that will work with this or that will complement this. Or if their equipment fails on their truck, how can we support them? Much like in the Texas and Jasper County scenario, knowing what other things are out there is huge. So getting jurisdictions to talk and visit, again, pre-event, is absolutely huge in making those relationships work to get trucks to physically be able to talk to each other. And as a side note to that, with Maryland in particular, one of our participants from Maryland was from the state. He came out because they're actually getting ready to build some vehicles, some quick deploy vehicles and resources. And they were trying to get ideas for that. So when I saw you were from Maryland, I wanted to mention that part too.
Getting people to talk to each other is a lot harder than getting equipment to talk to each other. Okay, Brent, you got your hand up.
Yeah, Dan, thanks very much. Appreciate that. Good evening, Johnathan. I'm just from Ontario, and I'm just curious, do you use DMR or D-Star at all in your exercises?
We have not in the exercises. We focus mainly on the P25 side because that's really the public safety standard that we're going with. But we have a lot of public safety agencies using DMR. We do have a lot of capabilities out there, as well as in the amateur community. We have a lot of DMR out there. So one of the things we're actually talking about doing is a deployed amateur DMR repeater on site on the roof of the casino for this next time we do the exercise, and to use it for talking. Because again, a lot of our people already have their ham radio licenses. So we want to go ahead and look at doing that as well and get some more amateur capability and resources available for the event.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Not a problem, Brent, anytime. I just happened to catch your hand go up. I've been looking for the yellow hands and Brent didn't find the button. Anybody else? I thought I saw another hand up. I don't.
I think I saw one from Dan and one from Victor.
Victor, Dan, go ahead, Dan.
I'm matching the other hand. So a lot of the confusion about interoperability, I think is sourced because you actually have to follow the money. And P25 is a federal standard, and any agency in the country, be it state, municipal, county, that wants a piece of that pie is going to have to adhere to the P25 standards. So, you know, what Johnathan just described about variances from NIFOG, National Interoperability, a document that's more than a year old is at risk of not actually being having the full story for interoperability at the purely communication side. But it's the way you do things and the willingness to do things in a broad enough base of OPSEC issues and awareness that has to be spread among those who are actually doing it. And in every case, when something didn't work right, I'd follow the money back up the chain and figure out where somebody put some of it in their pocket instead of doing what the spec said to do. And that proved to be a very lucrative way to bolster the funds for my specific branch.
And we've seen that happen a lot. And it's very concerning. So in full disclosure, I actually own my own business where I do public safety technology and communications now. And it's because my peers pushed me into that. So I have 8 employees, but I'm still a responder. I'm still a volunteer. After doing it 20 years, I can't walk away. So there are some companies that do that, but I will say there are some that insist on doing it the right way. We're, from my company standpoint, we've actually had customers say, we don't need those national interop channels in our radio. Don't put those in. And I said, no, if you're getting your equipment taken care of by us, they're going in there. I don't care. We're going to hold you to a higher standard. And that is something that I've held very near and dear to my heart, as well as many of my staff, which are current and former practitioners in public safety, is we're going to do it right. We're not going to be the reason somebody gets hurt or worse during an event.
I like that. I like that. Tom, you got your hand up.
Yeah, we had 2 ice storms here while I was still active in fire and rescue as a volunteer. And because I was an electrician for my bread work, I got called in on both of them when generators failed to start and to get power to the communications unit. And my county is relatively wealthy. I think compared to most counties in the United States, it's better off in terms of money. And yet nobody had thought how to get power to that communications van from any place other than its onboard generator. Well, that's fine until you're sitting on a firehouse ramp in a residential community with all the power out at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the generator wasn't spec'd to be a theater and amusement park generator where it's going to be quiet. It was one of these roars, if you will. So in an hour's time, I had made them up an adapter for the fire station's clothes dryer outlet. And then I made them up an adapter for a electric range outlet, because every home in the country seems to have one or the other, unless you're really unlucky and it's an all gas home. And then of course you turn to the home across the street and they're likely to have one or the other. And as long as they have it with those adapters, you can plug into it. So just an idea for somebody to try and work up as a suggested list of ways for communications unit to have these quick adapters. One that's rather expensive, I'm afraid, but will work every time. Snaps in a place behind a meter. Any electric meter, those are absolutely standard nationwide. And it provides you an outlet off the bottom of the adapter. And you can order the outlets in a bunch of different formats, but hopefully people can talk about which one in advance and maybe get the one that will do what they want to do. Just a couple of thoughts.
That's actually really interesting. So we actually had a task or an inject in the exercise that stated your onboard generator for your communications vehicle has failed. Do you have backup battery capabilities? How long can you run on backup? And what is your plan to get power back either from a neighboring truck, a portable generator, those types of things? And that was actually born out of a real world scenario that happened for the communications truck. I have a regional communications truck that I manage that's based in our county here that covers 18 counties in Southwest Missouri. That's a Homeland Security funded truck, but I still manage it because I'm the tech geek for our 18 county region. And so we actually had that happen. It was deployed to a fair, and I quite literally got a text message of a picture with smoke rolling out of the back of the truck, that our power system had failed in the truck. We had a catastrophic failure, and they were operating on battery. So it was a really quick triage. Let's see what we can do. How long can we stay on battery? What do we got to do to get back in service? These are real world things that happen that we have to be ready for, because communications is critical. You can't just say, we can get by without it. It doesn't work like that. So I'm glad to hear. I hadn't heard about the power meter adapter idea, the meter base idea. I'm actually going to look into that, because that's actually interesting. I'd never heard of that before.
It's good when we share ideas here. Victor, you got your hand up.
Thank you. Washington State just had a 5th Saturday drill the end of last month. And surprisingly, my own fire station is the fire operations center in case of a catastrophe. I was not expecting to be thrown in as the operator for the exercise. I just said, okay, I'll be part of the team that's there. And then all of a sudden I was doing fire control. So you have to be ready to handle any job that comes your way. And underline that enough. I've written 2 different reports about what has happened that weekend, and everything you've said tonight just kind of reinforces that whole thing about the different things that we have to do along the way. It's been very exciting. It was very exciting being that control operator, because it certainly pushed me to a limit I hadn't been to before. But yeah, it's very exciting, and tonight has been very, very helpful. So thank you very much.
Very welcome. And one of the things that when I was the county emergency management director for a couple of years there, I was also president of our local ham club. And our club was very much focused on assisting during events. And we're in tornado country, ice storm country. And so I bought, from our emergency management budget, I bought them a 756 Pro 3. We had a 706 Mark II-G. We had a really nice setup for our hams. But most of the time when our hams came in, they weren't having to use the equipment. They were there, what can we do to help? We don't have to talk on the radio. We don't have to talk on the ham side. If you need to use us as a radio operator on the public safety side, if you need to use us as a message runner, tell us where you need us. And just remember that flexibility is key to meet the needs of the situation. There's been many times where I said, hey, what do you need me to do? I'm great with blinky lights and wires and cables. Sometimes they just need somebody to make the coffee. So keep that in mind. Flexibility is important, and showing your value in the flexibility, make sure that you get called back again and again and again, and they put their trust in you.
Very good points. Very, very good points, and very much needed. When we go out there as volunteers, that's what we are as volunteers. Radio is our expertise, but we also know how to dump waste paper baskets. Okay, I see that Dan has got his hand up again. Go ahead, Dan. Unmute. Unmute.
Oh, you're so particular about that. Johnathan, I want to make clear that I wasn't implying that what was lucrative was people, not doing their jobs or any kind of malfeasance between trusted vendors. But for instance, the military had a whole lot of satellite systems about 20 years ago, and they didn't know what to do with them. And fortunately, in another government agency, we were able to get them to put T1 speed internet access in remote ranger stations, because we couldn't retain rangers or have them come back seasonally. They go through internet withdrawal. And so we were able to get them, and I ended up having to obligate other divisions year-end funds, and we still had problem paying it because it was sort of surveyed from DOD to the Department of Interior, and nobody knew what to do with the money at the end of the year. But, 15 different remote T1 low Earth orbit, 650 millisecond latency communication systems made them much more willing to take duty stations in isolated areas. That and even earlier than that, just spending other divisions year-end money on aviation scaffolding made the maintenance division decide they liked me and my crew. And anytime we needed something done, they were right on top of it, including the high voltage crew, which was really valuable because they would string cables for us. So you have to see the bigger picture and where you can apply what you have available to you in terms of resources and skills to move things in a common direction and know what the common mission is.
Agreed. And that was one of the lessons I learned early on as a young emergency management director, which had slightly less gray hair than I have now. As a county emergency management director, I had a staff of 2 full-time staff, and I had about 40 volunteers. And I had about, you see my little pinky finger there, about that much authority to ask somebody nicely to go get me a cup of coffee. I could not order people to do things. So one of the things that I learned is not necessarily the carrot and the stick, but interagency favors. I would help write grants for other agencies and get them equipment so they would remember and help us when we had big events. And that really paid off. We had a very large ice storm in 2007 and parts of our county without power for 3 or 4 weeks. And all of these agencies that we had helped came to the table and helped staff the emergency operations center, helped bring things to the table that we needed. And our county was about a week ahead in response and recovery compared to our neighboring counties at the time because of those partnerships. Partnerships in this business are absolutely critical. And that's a really good story between DOD and DOI of how those partnerships can make the difference. And those people will remember that when you need a favor, and they'll come back and help you.
Okay. Alan, KE4TRR has been trying to get our attention. So go ahead there, Alan.
Okay, I turned on my video and unmuted. Is my voice getting through to everyone?
Yes.
Yep, you're good.
I'm fine.
Okay, so I don't have a background in public safety. My background is in meteorology. I worked for the National Weather Service for 28.5 years, a retired meteorologist, but that's just a little bit of history so that you know that I do have a bit of a background in, shall we say, public safety from the standpoint of meteorology. Now, I took part in a communications exercise that was put on by the Oregon SWIC in June of 2021 at the fairgrounds of one of the counties in Central Oregon. And I was registered to participate in the exercise as an auxiliary communicator. And of course, most of you know what that is. There's a task book for the auxiliary communicator. I guess it falls under the National Qualification System. So my role in that exercise, I was assigned to a communications unit, and I had the job of being the Alpha Uniform X-Ray Charlie, the auxiliary communicator in that communications unit. I'd never done that before, no prior experience working in a formal communications unit. Everyone else in that communications unit had a paid job in public safety. They also happened to have their ham radio licenses. But for me, and they were probably familiar with taking doing the comm unit, the communications unit thing, and the position that they were filling. For me, I was totally new to the concept and the experience of being a part of a formal communications unit. So it was a real eye opener for me. Now, the reason I want to get everyone's attention, there's a position task book for the auxiliary communicator for someone who's a licensed ham radio operator and wants to get credentialed for the experience that one gets when they take part in one of these communications exercises put on by a SWIC. And the Oregon SWIC has written a very nice set of instructions, but they're a little, shall we say, verbose and not as direct as they could be written. So, you know, the question is, who can initiate the task book? Would it be the county emergency manager that I report to here in Umatilla County in Northeast Oregon? Or is it someone like the SWIC? That aspect, you know, how do you get that task book started? And then how do you get the people that you worked with in that communications exercise to follow up and sign off, or, you know, give you the credential, so to speak, for some of these competencies that the AUXC is supposed to have? So those, I know that's a lot of words, but I'm kind of struggling in terms of getting my task book off the ground and getting some credit for taking part in that exercise, because I learned a lot. Back to you.
Yeah, so that's actually something that we struggle with on the national level. FEMA has created these great standardized position task books for all of the positions in incident command, not just communications, but for an incident commander, for a safety officer, for a logistics section chief, all of these great task books, so you can show core competencies and competence in what you're doing. And the communications realm is absolutely great. But the problem is that it is up to each state to determine how they're going to implement credentialing in their state. Every state has different rules about what it takes to open a task book, how long you have to complete your task book, how many different incidents it has to be spread over, and do you have to renew it? For example, state of Oklahoma, I believe, and I'm probably going to get part of this wrong, after you're credentialed in your communications unit leader task book, after 5 years, you have to recertify and redo everything in the book again. They're one of the more leading edge states for making sure you keep your competence. In the state of Missouri, we have to have ours spread out over 3 incidents. You can't do your entire task book in one incident, but you have to have it spread out over 3 incidents, and it has to be one of them an emergent incident. 2 of them can be pre-planned incidents or special events, but one of them has to be a truly emergent event. Some states you have 2 years from the date you initiate your task book to have everything completed, or you have to start over. Every state has different rules, and this has caused a lot of grief, particularly when I go around the country and teach some of the curriculum. I get asked, well, how do I start a task book? How do I do this? You really have to go to your statewide interoperability coordinator and determine what the rules are for your particular state. Now, on this memorandum of understanding that we're doing, that'll be the national reciprocity framework that we're working on, you're going to have your final evaluation and final sign-offs done in your home state. You can't do all of them remote, all of them in different states. Your final evaluation has to be in your state. And that's one of the things that's really a stickler for every state. They want that. And we get that. We completely appreciate that. I'm hopeful that this national reciprocity framework that we're working on will eventually lead us down the path to a national credentialing standard. At the federal level, there's something called NQS, or National Qualification Standard. But right now, it's still really up to every state to figure out what they're going to do. I'm hopeful that eventually we'll get that national standard that really says, this is how you can get your task book started. These are the rules for doing it. Because with every state being a hodgepodge, it really is a challenge. And trying to decipher what each state wants when each state's lawyers get involved is sometimes a little tricky.
Can I follow up on that with a few more comments? This is Alan.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So from my perspective, well, okay, there were actually 4 fully staffed communications units that were taking part in that exercise. It was a 2-day exercise, and they wanted to have the auxiliary communicator position within the state of Oregon's communications unit occupied by a breathing live licensed amateur radio operator. So I got the word out to hams in Central Oregon that this exercise was going to take place. And I think if I hadn't done that, those positions in those 4 communications units would have been vacant during that exercise. So but they wanted to have those positions filled. The problem that I see is the follow-up to get the volunteers who took part in that exercise as auxiliary communicators, to get them, to give them some credit for the experience they gained by taking part in that exercise, because it was a first for all of us licensed hams who were taking part in the auxiliary communicator position in each of those comm units. None of us had done that before. So we should have been given some credit for that. And I think that's where the ball was dropped, my humble opinion. And that's all I'll say. Kate, back to you.
No, that's absolutely a fair point. And really, Auxcomm is in its infancy. It just got started a few years ago. It's really the newest position in the communications unit. And a lot of states are still trying to figure out how they want to implement it, how they want to roll with it, put their own little twist on it to meet the needs of their state. And so we actually saw this with the communications unit leader program back when it first started in the all hazards world and the emergency management world. Golly geez, it's been early 2000s at this point, when it really started rolling out to credential people in that position. We saw the same thing, and it became a chicken and the egg. Is we want to certify these people to show that they know what they're doing, but who signs off to certify them? And it's a chicken and the egg. And it's really difficult when it's a new program, a new position, to really get that rolling. I think we're going to see Auxcomm is definitely picking up speed as more and more states adopt the Auxcomm position and platform. I really think we're going to see that grow quite a bit. And we're going to have some speed bumps along the way, but we're definitely getting much further than we were 3 or 4 years ago, even when Auxcomm first launched. There was a lot of apprehension, but it's definitely a lot more widely accepted now.
One more thing. I thought that the communications unit leader, the COMML, who was in charge of the communications unit that I was assigned to, I thought that he would be the logical person to, sign off on some of those tasks, the competencies that I got some experience and learning, those aspects of the comm unit. Am I wrong? Do you think the communications unit leader should be the person to sign off on those competencies that I gained during that exercise?
So typically the way we've seen it work in our state, the communications unit leader, which is the one that oversees the entire communications unit, can sign a task book in our state for any subordinate position within the communications unit. So that would include communications technician, radio operator, and Auxcomm. Now, not every state may have those rules. And with Auxcomm being as new as it is, they may have not been comfortable signing it too. Just at that point in 2021, I think Auxcomm had been out for maybe a year or two at that point. Auxcomm's not been out for a few years at this point. So they may have just not had the familiarity or felt that they were the appropriate person to sign, and not knowing what Oregon's rules are. I don't know the Oregon SWIC. I know, there's one up there I know, but I can't remember. It all runs together after all. But with every state having the different rules, this is really why we need that national standard that says, these are the rules, these are who can sign books. because with the fragmentation of the different states and different rules, it really makes it difficult. If I go to another state and deploy for an event, can I get my book signed off by them? Will my state accept it? And these are things that I think that framework will help solve too.
And one more question. I did get my county emergency manager to initiate my task book for the auxiliary communicator position in the communications unit for Oregon. And I used version 1.0 of that task book. Now, since that task book was initiated or begun by my county emergency manager, I found out that there's version 2.0 of that task book for the auxiliary communicator. So is version 1.0 no longer valid?
Again, that goes to each state's rules. It really depends on when you initiated that book. If you initiated it right then, most states will generally take that. If that's what you started with, you can finish with that book, that version of the book. We've run into the same thing in the COMMEX stuff, but most states are generally accepting of that. If you launched on 1.2 version of the book, then they'll take your full 1.2 version. You don't have to redo everything into a 2.0 version.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, my version is version 1.0. I guess the initial earliest version of that task book.
Dan, if you're trying to talk, you're muted.
Yeah, helps when you're unmuted. Yeah, we got some more questions out there. We need to move on. I see Victor's got his hands up, but he's moved away from his workstation. So let's go to Jim.
I'm right here, Dan. I'm right here, Dan.
Okay, go ahead.
I stepped away from my screen. I put up a background photo of myself working that Fifth Saturday drill, and I really got to show off my leader dog from leaderdog.org. He's my guide dog, goes everywhere with me. He's down there in the bright light. So everybody enjoy it. I got posted around Twitter and a couple other places. So I thought I'd share it with you. Have a great evening. Good night.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing there. I like your dog. He looks like he's all taken care of. Okay, Jim, you want to pick it up there?
Sure, thanks, Dan. Hey, Jonathan, I had the pleasure of attending that COMMEX back in September, and I had the opportunity to actually get my, yes, thank you, my competition over here. I had the opportunity to get my Oxcom task book completed, and so we've had some conversations here in Kansas since then, because I am part of the COMMU working group. Travis Marshall, who I think you know, Adam, Chris, that I know you know, we're still in the talking stages, but we definitely like to be a bigger part of the Oxcom part of the next exercise in 2 years. We think there's a lot of potential there. We know some of us on this group have probably seen some of the things that John Peterson's put out lately, that Oxcom 2.0 is going to be out sometime in 2024, which if the timing's right, might work out real well for the next COMMEX. But I'm a COML, but now I'm also an Oxcom qualified, and we're here in the Kansas side. We're really looking to ramp things up, both on the Oxcom side and the COML side. So thanks for putting on a great exercise, and you really you really picked a great ops section chief. I know she was pulling her hair out the whole week, but boy, she just did a bang up job.
So it's a funny story. Our operations section chief is one of our communications unit leaders, and also one of our instructors for the curriculum. But she's about 4'10" on a good day, and it's really interesting when people start to interact with her. They're like, "Who's this person? Do they really know what they're doing?" and they learned very quickly that she will put them in her place or in their place. And she can keep up with the best of them. I have seen her rewire trucks just like that when we've had a failure on a piece of equipment. Kansas has been a great partner with us. Like I said, I knew you were there, Travis. I don't know if you remember the index message that Travis put out for us. That was very entertaining on the last day of the exercise, but it was absolutely great. Kansas is a great partner with us on it. And I think we're going to see a lot more interaction between Kansas and Missouri, and really the entire Central States organization moving forward. Oxcom, again, is critical, and it's a growing thing. It's kind of new. There's been the speed bumps, but it's getting there. And we've had some talks, and I know you probably know J.M. Rowe from Arkansas as well. He's got some great ideas that we want to bring in from the Oxcom side, such as HF. We want to have a 2-meter talk-in next time. We're talking about deploying a DMR repeater on site potentially. So we're going to see the Oxcom side of this event, of this exercise, grow. And it's going to be really that feedback from the real world people, not somebody from the government saying we should do this. It's real world. What should we be preparing for? What should we be doing? What do we see? And that's really where we're drawing our strength from. So Jim, thank you for those comments. Absolutely great.
Sure, and I'll just add one more thing here real quick. In terms of my task book, if any of you have looked at that Oxcom task book, and I know Alan had from his, because he was on 1.0. There's a few things in there that are pretty ham radio specific in terms of activities. There's a lot of it that's a little more generic, and you know, a COMMEL can easily, you know, validate that. But you know, how many COMMELs that aren't hams know what a 40-meter dipole looks like, right? So we negotiated things with our SWIC in Kansas, Jason Bryant, and he approved having those particular tasks in my task book signed off by an extra class ham. You know, he felt like that, and we felt like that was somebody that probably had the appropriate technical knowledge to be able to validate that, yes, in fact, I had demonstrated those skills successfully. So that was just one, you know, it doesn't have to be the same person. It doesn't have to be only a COMMEL, because Oxcom is a little bit of a different animal. So that was the approach we took to that.
Okay, Johnson, you're muted.
Yes, sir. I'm still here though. Jim, like you said, it's finding and building that relationship with the statewide interop coordinator that really makes it the way to get Oxcom rolling in your state, and finding a way that the SWIC was comfortable for you to be able to get that book signed is critical. Having a relationship with your statewide interoperability coordinator really makes a world of difference for being able to get things done.
Okay, do we have any more questions out there? How about some answers? You got some answers out there. General comments. I don't see anything. Johnson, do you?
I do not. Thank you guys all for your time. You know, I'm glad that we were able to have a lot of good discussions here, see a really good roundtable, and hear a lot of feedback. It's really refreshing to hear that now.
Yes, this is what this type of get together is for. It's why we do it like we do, rather than having a webinar or something like that. This is just a much better deal. Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to say 73s and pull the plug for everybody. Johnson, I really appreciate the presentation. JM is good people, and I'm going to have to thank him for getting you on this. Appreciate him a lot. And with that, I am going to say, we'll give everybody a last chance. Jump in if you're going to jump in. If you're not, I'm pulling the plug. See you next week.